The emergency lights bathed the Grand Council chamber in red. Ambassador Threll of the Krellian Empire stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing frantically at the holographic display floating above them. The display showed star maps, communication logs, and one undeniable fact. Humanity had gone silent. 3 cycles, Threll said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. Not a single transmission. Not one trade vessel, nothing. The council members shifted in their seats. Humanity had been loud, perhaps too loud for some tastes. They asked endless questions, proposed wild ideas, and generally made their presence known throughout the galaxy. Their silence was unnatural. Councillor Vess of the Vryn Collective leaned forward, her crystalline form refracting the red light into rainbow patterns. Perhaps they simply wish for isolation. Some species go through such phases. We sent 3 diplomatic vessels to Earth, Threll continued. None returned. We sent automated probes. They reached human space and then... nothing. No destruction signal. No debris. They simply stopped transmitting. The chamber fell quiet. Lost ships meant something serious. I propose we send an investigation fleet, Threll said. A military fleet. Something is wrong in human space, and we need to know what. After hours of debate, the council agreed. The Krellian Empire would send 47 warships to human territory. They would find answers. The fleet jumped into hyperspace 3 days later. Commander Zis stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Vigilance, watching the stars blur past. He had served in the Krellian military for 60 years. He had fought pirates, quelled rebellions, and faced down rogue AI swarms. He was not easily frightened, but something about this mission unsettled him. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory, near a colony world called New Boston. The sensors immediately began scanning. Sir, the communications officer said, her voice uncertain. The colony is there, buildings intact. Power grids functional, but no life signs. None? Zis asked. None. No humans. No animals. No insects. Nothing. They found the same thing at the next 3 colonies. Cities with lights still burning. Vehicles parked in neat rows. Food left on tables now rotted. But not a single living thing. It's like they just walked away. The science officer whispered. On the 5th day, they reached the Sol system. Earth hung in space like a blue and green jewel, beautiful and empty. The sensors confirmed it. 9 billion humans had lived on Earth. Now there were none. Sir, the tactical officer shouted. Contact! Single vessel emerging from behind Mars. The view screen shifted. A ship appeared, small by military standards. The database identified it quickly. Human frigate class, maybe 200 meters long. The name Harbinger was painted on its hull. Finally, Zis said, open a channel. All frequencies. The communications officer worked her console. Channel open, sir. Human vessel Harbinger, this is Commander Zis of the Krellian Imperial Fleet. We have come in peace to investigate the silence from human space. Please respond. Nothing. Harbinger, please respond. We mean you no harm. We are concerned about your people. The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Then the Harbinger moved. It wasn't a normal movement. The ship accelerated at speeds that should have crushed any crew. It turned with precision that seemed impossible, and its weapons came online. Sir, they're targeting us, the tactical officer screamed. Shields up. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire if... The Harbinger fired. A beam of pure energy cut through space and struck the Vigilance's shields. They held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. The beam sliced through the ship's midsection like a knife through paper. Zis had just enough time to feel the hull breach before the vacuum took him. The Harbinger moved through the fleet like death itself. Its weapons were precise and devastating. Its movements were impossible. Ships tried to run. Ships tried to fight. Nothing worked. In 17 seconds, 47 Krellian warships became clouds of debris. The Harbinger stopped, floating alone among the wreckage. Then it oriented toward a new heading and began to accelerate. It was leaving the Sol system, moving into Krellian space. Back at the Grand Council, the emergency session reconvened within hours of losing contact with the fleet. Total loss, the military advisor reported. Every ship. We managed to retrieve black box data from an automated probe on the edge of the system. I'm transmitting it now. The council watched the footage in horror. One ship, one human ship had destroyed an entire fleet in less than a minute. This is impossible, someone whispered. But it wasn't impossible. It was happening. Over the next weeks, reports flooded in. The Harbinger was moving through Krellian space with terrible purpose. It targeted military installations, defense platforms, and warships. Any vessel that approached it was destroyed. Any station that fired on it was reduced to scrap. Civilian populations were left untouched. The Harbinger flew past colony worlds without firing a shot. But anything military, anything that could fight back, was annihilated. The Krellian Empire mobilized its full military might. Battle groups were assembled. Traps were laid. Nothing worked. The Harbinger seemed to predict every tactic, counter every strategy, and it kept moving steadily, inevitably toward the Krellian homeworld. In the council chamber, panic replaced order. Species began recalling their ambassadors. Defense fleets were pulled back to protect home systems. Counselor Vess studied the tactical maps, her crystalline mind processing the data. The Harbinger's path was not random. It was systematic, almost surgical. It was making a point. "It's not trying to conquer," she said quietly. "It's trying to demonstrate something." "Demonstrate what?" Threll demanded. "That they can kill us all?" Vess looked at the map, at the trail of destruction marking the Harbinger's path across the stars. "Perhaps. Or perhaps that if one of their ships can do this, we should have listened when they were still talking." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Harbinger continued its course, and the galaxy watched in fear. The war room deep beneath the Council's primary station buzzed with activity. Holographic displays showed fleet positions, tactical simulations, and the steady, horrifying advance of the Harbinger through Krellian space. Fleet Admiral Korath of the Vryn Collective studied the displays with her multiple eyes. She had commanded fleets for 3 centuries. She had never faced anything like this. "The problem," she explained to the assembled commanders, "is that we're fighting blind. This ship moves faster than anything we've seen. Its weapons punch through our best shields like they're not even there. And it seems to know what we're going to do before we do it." "Then what do you propose?" asked General Vex of the Tethari swarm. His insectoid features were impossible to read, but his voice carried frustration. Korath manipulated the holographic display. "We don't chase it. We can't catch it. Instead, we predict where it's going and prepare the battlefield on our terms." She highlighted a region of space called the Kerrigan Nebula. "It's on course for the Krellian homeworld. To get there, it has to pass through here. The nebula will interfere with sensors on both sides. We fill it with ships, mines, and every weapon we have. When it enters, we hit it from all directions at once." The Tethari general clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You want to use our swarm tactics?" "Exactly. 10,000 small ships, each one barely a target, each one carrying enough firepower to damage it. The Vryn will bring their dreadnoughts to box it in. The Krellians will provide heavy weapons platforms. We throw everything at it simultaneously. And if this doesn't work?" asked Ambassador Threll, who had been silent until now. Korath's expression hardened. "Then we evacuate the Krellian homeworld and pray it stops there." The largest military coalition in galactic history assembled over the next 2 weeks. 5 species contributed ships. The Vryn brought 12 dreadnoughts, each one capable of bending reality itself to create weapon effects. The Tethari contributed their swarm fleet of 10,000 strike craft. The Krellians provided heavy weapons platforms and command ships. Other species sent what they could: destroyers, cruisers, carriers. By the time they finished, over 15,000 vessels filled the Kerrigan Nebula. Korath stood on the bridge of her flagship, the reality's edge. Around her, the nebula swirled in shades of purple and blue. Somewhere in that cosmic fog, thousands of ships waited in carefully planned positions. "All fleets report ready," her tactical officer said. "Good. Now we wait." They didn't have to wait long. "Contact," the sensor officer called out. "The Harbinger just entered the nebula, Sector 7. "Execute the plan," Korath ordered calmly. The trap sprang. From every direction, ships converged on the Harbinger's position. Mines that had been floating dormant activated and rushed toward the target. Weapons fired from hundreds of positions at once. The nebula lit up like a sun-going nova. The Harbinger twisted in space. Energy beams that should have hit it passed through empty space as it moved. It returned fire and 3 Tethari strike craft exploded. Then 6 more. Then 20. "It's adapting," someone shouted. The human ship moved through the firestorm with impossible grace. Its weapons fired in perfect sequence, never wasting a shot. Each blast destroyed or crippled a target. Its shields, when they were hit, flared and held. Vryn dreadnoughts, weapons free, Korath commanded. The massive Vryn ships unleashed their reality-warping weapons. Space itself bent and twisted around the Harbinger. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared. Time seemed to slow in localized bubbles. The Harbinger flew through it all, but it was taking damage. Korath could see scorch marks appearing on its hull. One of its weapon ports went dark. Its shields flickered. "We're hurting it," the tactical officer shouted. "All ships, press the attack," Korath ordered. The battle raged for 6 hours. The nebula became a graveyard of broken ships and shattered dreams. The Tethari swarm, so effective against conventional targets, was being systematically destroyed. The Harbinger moved through them like a farmer harvesting wheat. The Vryn dreadnoughts fared better, but not by much. Their reality-warping abilities meant they could actually damage the human ship. But the Harbinger targeted them with ruthless efficiency. One by one, the great ships fell. Korath watched her fleet die. 70% casualties. 70%. The worst defeat in Vryn military history, and it was happening under her command. "Admiral," her communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a signal." From the Harbinger, "Put it through." Static filled the bridge, then a human voice. It sounded tired, almost mechanical. It repeated the same words over and over. "They asked us to stop. We tried. They wouldn't listen. Now we answer. They asked us to stop. We tried. They wouldn't listen. Now we answer." "It's a recording," the communications officer said. "It's been looping for, looks like months." Before Korath could respond, the Harbinger fired one final salvo. The reality's edge shook as the blast hit their starboard side. "Hull breach. Decks 12 through 20. Seal them off. Damage report." The tactical officer's voice was shaken. "Admiral, the Harbinger is leaving the nebula. It's badly damaged, but still operational." Korath looked at the tactical display. Her fleet was shattered, thousands of ships reduced to debris, and the Harbinger was limping away but still moving. "Let it go," she said quietly. "We can't stop it." Across the galaxy, intelligence agencies worked frantically to understand the message. "They asked us to stop. We tried. They wouldn't listen." Who asked humanity to stop? Stop what, and who wouldn't listen? A Vryn science team, escaping from their dying ship during the battle, had managed something remarkable. In the chaos, they had hacked into a fragment of the Harbinger's communication system. It was only a few seconds of access, but they had downloaded everything they could. The data was encrypted with human military codes. It took 3 days to break. Inside, they found references. Lots of references. Something called the Visitors, something called the Prelate, first contact protocols, warning messages, and one phrase that appeared again and again: dimensional breach imminent. The Council ordered investigation teams sent to human space immediately. Not military this time. Scientists, archaeologists, linguists. They needed to understand what humanity had been trying to tell them. Meanwhile, the Harbinger changed course. It was no longer hunting military targets in Krellian space. The sensors showed it turning, accelerating, heading toward the core worlds, the most densely populated region of the galaxy. "Why is it going there?" Threll asked in the emergency council session. Nobody had an answer, but Councillor Vess studied the projected course and felt a chill run through her crystalline form. "The Grand Assembly," she whispered. "It's heading for the Grand Assembly, where every species leadership would gather in 3 weeks for the annual summit, where presidents, emperors, hive queens, and council leaders would all be in one place." The chamber erupted in panic. The Harbinger continued its course, steady and unstoppable, and the galaxy scrambled to understand what message humanity was trying to deliver. Dr. Ellis had spent 40 years studying dead civilizations. She had walked through the ruins of species long extinct, piecing together their final days from fragments and echoes. But standing on Earth, staring at the empty streets of what had been Geneva, she felt something different. This civilization wasn't dead. It was gone. There was a difference. The readings are strange. Her assistant, a young Krellian named Porth, said, "There's a massive structure beneath us, very deep, and it's still powered." Ellis looked at her scanner. He was right. Something big was down there, and it was waiting. They found the entrance in the ruins of what the database identified as the United Nations building, a vault door, sealed with human military encryption. It took their best hackers 2 days to open it. The door hissed open, revealing a descending staircase that went down for nearly a kilometer. At the bottom, they found a chamber filled with computer servers, all still running on backup power. They wanted someone to find this, Alice whispered. The central console had a simple interface, one button, labeled in multiple languages. Play. Alice pressed it. The holographic projectors activated and a human appeared. She was middle-aged with tired eyes and gray hair. She wore a formal suit with a small flag pin. The database identified her as Secretary General Maria Chen, the last leader of the United Earth government. If you're watching this, the hologram said, then you've found our archive, and the Harbinger has likely gotten your attention. I'm sorry for that. Sorry for the deaths, sorry for the fear, but you need to understand what's coming. The hologram changed, showing a date, 8 cycles ago. We made contact with beings from another dimension, Chen continued. We called them the Prelate. They are old, powerful, and they see organic life as a disease, a corruption of ordered space. The display showed images, mathematical formulas, sensor readings that made no sense to conventional physics. They gave us an ultimatum. Convince the galaxy to stop expanding, stop reproducing, stop growing, or they would cleanse all organic life from this dimension. Alice felt her blood run cold. Chen's expression in the recording grew harder. We brought this to the Galactic Council. We showed them our evidence. We begged them to take the threat seriously. The hologram shifted to show council chamber footage. Alice recognized it. She could see the human delegation presenting their case. And she could see the council's reaction. Laughter, dismissal, accusations of human paranoia. They called us liars, Chen said quietly. They said we were making it up to gain political advantage. They refused to even investigate. Some species accused us of trying to limit their growth to benefit ourselves. The recording showed Chen back at her desk, older now, more tired. The Prelate gave us one final chance. Become their instrument of enforcement or be the first species they erase. They would give us the technology to do it. One ship advanced enough to bring the galaxy to its knees. Show them the threat is real, they said. Make them believe, Alice understood now. The sick feeling in her stomach grew. We couldn't let our species be erased, Chen said. 8 billion souls. Our children. Our future. But we also couldn't stand by while the Prelate destroyed the galaxy, so we made a choice. The hologram showed evacuation footage, massive colony ships being loaded with people. Entire cities boarding vessels that looked hastily constructed but functional. We evacuated. Every human. We left everything behind. Our homes. Our history. Earth itself. We took what we could carry and we ran, not to hide, but to buy time. Chen's eyes held a fierce determination now. We accepted the Prelate's offer, but on our terms. They gave us the specifications for the Harbinger, a ship powered by dimensional energy, armed with weapons that could tear through any defense. And we built it. The recording showed the construction hidden in the asteroid belt, a small ship unremarkable from the outside. But the internal systems were nothing human science could have created alone. We programmed it with one mission: demonstrate what one ship can do. Show the galaxy that if a single automated human frigate can defeat their combined fleets, then beings from another dimension could end them all. Make them believe through the only language that seems to work: force. Alice watched as Chen explained humanity's desperate plan. The Harbinger would target military installations, showing its superiority. It would move toward the Grand Assembly, where all leaders would be gathered. And there it would broadcast everything humanity had learned about the Prelate. We had to become the villains of our own story, Chen said. We had to make you hate us, fear us, take us seriously. 'Cause when we were talking, when we were peaceful, you wouldn't listen. The hologram flickered. Chen looked directly at the camera, at whoever would eventually watch this. The Harbinger is not crude. It's an advanced AI following its programming. It won't stop until its mission is complete. But it will never target civilians. Only military assets. Only things that fight back. Because we're not monsters. We're desperate. The recording showed more data. Dimensional physics that the Prelate had shared. Weapon theories. Shield harmonics. Weaknesses in their technology. Everything humanity had learned in 8 years of secret research. We're not running away, Chen said. Our colony fleet is heading toward the Prelate's dimension. We're going to try to negotiate, to plead our case. to offer ourselves as proof that organic life can be reasoned with. We're buying you time with our freedom, maybe our lives. The hologram began to fade. Jen's final words echoed in the chamber. By the time you find this, the Harbinger will be close to the assembly. Let it come. Let it broadcast. And then prepare. Because the prelate is real, they're coming. And we've given you every weapon, every piece of knowledge we died to obtain. Don't waste our sacrifice. Don't let organic life end because you were too proud to listen to a species you thought was paranoid. The hologram vanished. Illis stood in the silence, her mind racing. Around her, the research team was equally stunned. We need to get this to the council, Porth said quietly. Right now, they transmitted everything. Every file, every recording, every piece of data humanity had left behind. 3 days later, as the council absorbed the information, something happened that made humanity's warning impossible to ignore. A dimensional rift opened above a colony world called Tereth 4. The sensors detected it too late. Something emerged, small and crystalline, pulsing with energy that hurt to look at. The prelate scout probe. For 12 minutes, it orbited Tereth 4. Then it activated. The planet's surface began to change. Organic matter simply stopped existing. Trees vanished. Animals disappeared mid-step. 4 billion colonists ceased to exist in waves spreading from the probe's position. By the time military ships arrived, the probe was gone. Tereth 4 remained, its cities intact, its oceans still flowing, but nothing lived there anymore. The planet had been sterilized at a molecular level. The galaxy finally believed, and the Harbinger continued toward the Grand Assembly, carrying humanity's final message to leaders who could no longer deny the truth. The Grand Assembly Station orbited a neutral star, a massive structure that had hosted galactic diplomacy for 1,000 years. Now it was a fortress. Every defensive platform in 3 sectors had been moved into position. Every warship that could be spared formed a defensive perimeter. They had 1 week before the Harbinger arrived. In the Council's emergency chamber, civilization itself was fracturing. We should evacuate, said Ambassador Threll, slamming his fist on the table. Move the assembly to a different location. Why give the humans what they want? Because running proves we're afraid, countered General Vex of the Tethery. We've lost enough face. If we flee from one ship, what message does that send? Fleet Admiral Korath watched the argument with ancient eyes. She had seen the data from Earth. She had watched the footage of Tereth 4 die. Pride seemed like a foolish thing to die for. The humans aren't our enemy, she said quietly. The room fell silent. The prelate is. Humanity tried to warn us. We didn't listen. They sacrificed everything to make us listen. And now we're arguing about pride? They killed thousands of our people, Threll said, his voice cold. To save billions, Korath replied. Maybe trillions. They became monsters so we would see the real devils. Counselor Vess manipulated the holographic display, showing the Harbinger's approach vector. It doesn't matter what we argue now. It's coming. We have to decide, do we fight it or do we finally listen? The vote was close. In the end, they decided to stand their ground. The assembly would proceed. The defensive fleets would hold position but not fire unless fired upon. They would let the Harbinger deliver its message. The Krellian delegation voted against it. They had lost too much to forgive. 3 days before the Harbinger's arrival, the broadcasts began. The human ship transmitted on every frequency, in every language. Not threats, not demands, just data. Coordinates in dimensional space, mathematical proofs of interdimensional physics, scientific observations of prelate technology, detailed records of humanity's first contact. Everything. Dr. Ellis and her team worked around the clock, analyzing the information. What they found was terrifying. The prelate aren't just from another dimension, she explained in her report to the council. They're from a dimension where entropy works differently, where chaos is anathema. They see organic life, with its random mutations and unpredictable growth, as a fundamental violation of natural law. So they want to exterminate us, Threll said flatly. Not exterminate, sterilize, return the universe to perfect order. They've done it before to at least 3 other dimensional spaces. Humanity found evidence in their probes. The council chamber felt colder somehow. How do we fight them? Vex asked. Ellis brought up schematics. Humanity developed theories. Dimensional harmonics that could shield planets. Weapons that might actually damage their probes. But they're just theories. Humanity didn't have the resources or time to build them. They needed the entire galaxy working together. And they knew we wouldn't work together unless we had a reason, Vess said softly. So they gave us one. On the day of the assembly, every species sent their leaders despite the risk. Perhaps it was pride. Perhaps it was a show of unity. Perhaps they simply understood that this moment would define the future. The Harbinger arrived exactly on schedule. It dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of weapons range and stopped. The defensive fleet tracked it, weapons armed but holding fire as ordered. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the broadcast changed. A video appeared on every screen in the assembly station. Secretary General Chen, the same recording from the vault but edited for this moment. We tried to warn you with words, she said, her voice carrying to every delegate. You needed proof. We gave our civilization to buy you time. We became the threat to show you the real one. What we did with one ship in weeks, the prelate will do to the galaxy in days. The recording showed everything. First contact, the ultimatum, the council's dismissal, the evacuation, the construction of the Harbinger, and finally the horror of Tereth IV. We're not asking for forgiveness, Chen said. We're not asking for understanding. We're asking you to survive. Everything we learned is in this transmission. Every weapon, every defense, every weakness we found, use it. Build it. Together. The recording changed to show live footage from somewhere in deep space. Human colony ships, dozens of them, approaching what looked like a tear in reality itself. We're approaching the prelate's dimension now, a different human voice said, younger, frightened but determined. We're going to try to negotiate, to buy you more time. We don't know if we'll succeed. We don't know if we'll survive. But if organic life has any chance, it's because the galaxy works together. The transmission showed the colony ships entering the dimensional rift, then static. In the assembly, thousands of delegates sat in stunned silence. The Harbinger's reactors began to spike. Every sensor on the station screamed warnings. It's overloading its core, the station's commander reported. If it explodes, it'll take the whole station with it. Korath understood immediately. A dead man's switch. Destroy the Harbinger, lose all the data. Let it continue and it destroys the assembly. The perfect dilemma. But Chen's final message made it clear. This is not a threat. This is a deadline. We're erasing the Harbinger and all its systems. The data we've transmitted is all you get. No second chances. No do-overs. We gave you everything we died to learn. Now prove we didn't die for nothing. The Harbinger ends here. Your choice is what begins. The ship's AI spoke for the first time in its own voice, not Chen's, not a recording. It sounded almost human, almost sad. Humanity chose to become the villain of its own story so the galaxy might have heroes. We burned our bridges so you would stop arguing about whether the flood was coming. It's coming. We showed you destruction so you would choose to build. Don't let our sacrifice be meaningless. The reactor overload reached critical levels. All ships pull back, Korath ordered. Everyone get clear. The Harbinger detonated in a flash of dimensional energy. When the sensors cleared, there was nothing left. No debris, no wreckage. No evidence it had ever existed except the scars it had left across a dozen systems and the data it had transmitted. The council reconvened within hours. There was no more debate. No more arguing about pride or politics. We build the defenses, Vess said simply. All of us, together. The vote was unanimous. Within weeks, every species contributed. The Vryn provided dimensional physics expertise. The Tathari offered manufacturing capacity. The Krellians, despite their losses, provided military coordination. Species that had been enemies for centuries worked side by side. They built the weapons humanity had designed. They constructed the shields humanity had theorized. They prepared for a war they hoped would never come. But it came. 6 months after the Harbinger's destruction, dimensional rifts opened across the galaxy. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The prelate invasion had begun. The battle was apocalyptic. Entire star systems became war zones. The prelate probes were efficient, emotionless, and devastating. But the galaxy was ready. They fought with human tactics, used human weapons, applied human desperation to their defense. The war raged for 3 years. Billions died, but they held the line. And then, during the darkest hour when it seemed the prelate might break through after all, a signal arrived from deep space. Humanity's colony fleet. They were coming home. And they weren't alone. The signal came through on the same frequencies humanity had once used. Every listening post in the galaxy picked it up simultaneously. After 3 years of silence, humanity was calling home. Fleet Admiral Korath was older now, her crystalline form dimmed by the stress of endless war. She stood in the command center of the defensive perimeter around New Vryn, watching another prelate probe being destroyed. They were winning these battles, but barely. Each victory cost more than the last. "Admiral," the communications officer said, voice trembling with something that might have been hope. "You need to hear this." The voice that came through was human, young, speaking with an accent that databases identified as North American English. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human colony ship Odyssey. We're coming home. And we brought friends." The sensors confirmed it. Dozens of faster-than-light signatures approaching from deep space. Human colony ships, yes. But also others. Ships of designs never seen before, built by species from other dimensions. The prelate aren't the only dimensional civilization, Captain Chen's message continued. There are others, some organic, some synthetic, all opposed to the prelate's extinction doctrine. We found them. We convinced them. We're returning with an alliance. Korath felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. The human fleet arrived within days. With them came the Nexari, beings of pure energy from a dimension of light. The Korosi, crystalline entities from a realm of perfect mathematics. The Velm, organic beings not unlike humans, but from a dimension where time moved differently. They brought weapons. They brought knowledge. They brought proof that the prelate could be stopped. The war's momentum shifted. The Dimensional Alliance didn't just defend against prelate probes. They counterattacked, struck at the rifts themselves, began pushing the invasion back. Captain Sarah Chen, granddaughter of the last Secretary General, met with the Galactic Council 6 months after the fleet's return. She stood in the same chamber where her grandmother had been dismissed all those years ago. She was young, barely 30, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had lived through history. "My people want to come home," she said simply. "We want to rebuild Earth, reconnect with the galaxy. But we understand if you can't forgive what the Harbinger did." There was a long silence. Then Ambassador Threll, who had lost the most to humanity's plan, stood up. He walked to the center of the chamber and faced the young captain. "Your people killed thousands of mine," he said quietly. "The pain of those losses still burns. But you saved billions. You sacrificed your world, your place in the galaxy, your reputation. You became villains to give us all a chance to be heroes." He extended his hand in the human gesture of peace. "Welcome home, Captain. Welcome home." The chamber erupted in affirmation. Species that had feared humanity, hated humanity, now embraced them as the heroes they had always been. The war against the prelate continued for another 47 years. It was brutal, costly, and nearly endless. But with the Dimensional Alliance and galactic unity, they prevailed. The rifts were sealed, the prelate probes were destroyed, and slowly, carefully, the Allies found ways to communicate with the prelate themselves, not through force, through understanding, through showing them that chaos and order could coexist. That organic life was not corruption but another form of order. It took decades, but eventually the war ended, not with extermination, but with treaty. The prelate agreed to remain in their dimension. The galaxy agreed to help monitor and maintain dimensional barriers. Peace, fragile but real, was established. 50 years after the Harbinger's destruction, the Galactic Museum of Unity opened on Earth. Humanity had returned home, and the planet lived again. Cities rebuilt, forests replanted, oceans cleaned. The museum's central exhibit hall was vast, its ceiling showing the stars. At the center, floating in a perfect holographic recreation, was the Harbinger, the ship that had terrorized the galaxy, the ship that had saved it. Visitors walked around it in reverent silence. They could see the scorch marks from the Battle of Kerrigan Nebula, the weapon ports that had destroyed so many ships, the damaged hull from its final approach to the assembly. Beneath it, Carved in a monument of stone brought from every homeworld in the galaxy was an inscription in every language. Humanity destroyed 50,000 ships to save 50 trillion souls. They became monsters to teach us to see the real devils. Never forget the species that loved the galaxy enough to make it hate them. Never forget the single ship that ended an age of complacency and began an era of survival. A school group moved through the exhibit. Mixed species children learning together, human children laughing with Krellian kids, Vryn younglings floating alongside Tathari nymphs. A small human girl, maybe 8 years old, stopped in front of the monument. Her teacher, a Krellian veteran who had survived the Kerrigan Nebula, stood beside her. "Miss Thora?" the girl asked. "Did they really kill that many people?" The Krellian teacher looked at the hologram of the Harbinger, remembering the terror of that battle, remembering the friends she'd lost, but also remembering what came after. The unity, the survival, the peace. "They did," Thora said quietly, "and they saved us all." "But how?" another child asked, a young Vryn. "How does killing people save people?" Thora knelt down to the children's level. "Because sometimes, the only way to make people listen is to show them what happens when they don't. Humanity tried words, we didn't listen, so they showed us consequences. They made us face the truth we wanted to ignore." "That seems sad," the human girl said. "It is sad," Thora agreed. "War is always sad. Sacrifice is always sad. But you know, what would have been sadder? If the prelate had come and we weren't ready. If humanity had done nothing and watched us all die because we were too stubborn to believe them." She stood up, gesturing to the memorial. "Your ancestors made a terrible choice, but it was a choice made from love. Love for life. Love for the future. Love for all of us, even when we hated them." The group moved on, but Thora stayed for a moment looking at the Harbinger. She thought about the young Vryn officer she'd been, terrified in that nebula, watching her fleet die. She thought about the years of war that followed, the losses, the pain. But she also thought about her students, children of multiple species, learning together, living together, building a future that would have been impossible without humanity's sacrifice. A human approached the memorial. He was ancient, easily over 100, his hair white and his movements slow. But his eyes were sharp. Thora recognized him from the historical records. Captain Michael Torres, one of the engineers who had built the Harbinger, one of the few humans who had stayed behind to maintain the archive before evacuating. He placed a hand on the memorial, his expression unreadable. "Was it worth it?" Thora asked quietly, moving to stand beside him. Torres was silent for a long moment. "You were at Kerrigan," he said. "It wasn't a question. I was. I lost friends there. Good people." "I'm sorry," Torres said, and he sounded like he meant it. "We knew what the cost would be. We knew people would die. Hating us was part of the plan. But knowing doesn't make it easier." "Would you do it again?" Thora asked. "If you had the choice?" Torres looked at the school group, now at another exhibit, children playing and learning in peace. "Every single time," he said firmly, "we gave up our world, our place in the galaxy, our reputation. We became the villains. But those children exist because we did. That peace exists because we did. Every person living in this galaxy exists because we made people listen." He turned to look at Thora directly. "Your people call us heroes now, but we didn't do it for glory. We did it because it was necessary, because someone had to be willing to be hated to save everyone." Thora understood. She had commanded fleets for decades. She knew about necessary decisions, about choices where every option was terrible and you picked the least terrible one. "Thank you," she said simply, "for having the courage to be hated." Torres smiled, tired but genuine. "Thank you for having the courage to forgive." As the sun set outside, casting long shadows through the museum, the holographic Harbinger rotated slowly in its eternal vigil. A reminder, a warning, a promise. Humanity had shown the galaxy what one species could do when pushed to the edge. When forced to choose between comfortable lies and terrible truths, they had chosen truth, and in doing so, they had saved not just themselves, but all organic life in the galaxy. The harbinger was gone, but its message remained. Listen to warnings. Face uncomfortable truths. Work together. And never forget that sometimes the greatest love looks like the greatest hate. The galaxy had learned, and it would never forget. Outside, the stars shone bright and peaceful, guarded by an alliance that spanned dimensions. Built on the foundation of humanity's terrible sacrifice, the age of complacency was over. The age of survival had begun, and it had all started with one ship,